I think the main discussion in NBA circles right now is like, are the top 2 MVP candidates grifters? Are they unethical? Trademark to Cookies Hoops. Unethical ball, right? Even
As the experts on what or what is not ethical in the NBA, in fact, the coiners of the phrase themselves.
I had
These
the
conversations.
interns.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
The interns had a whole ethical basketball drop in the can, but I thought it was too. As the art director of the intern, I thought it was too stupid to do. I was like, no one wants to wear an ethical basketball shirt. I wish we did it because this is when James Harden was on the Rockets. And that's when the line, I had done all the typography, the interns had done all the typography, all the placements, all the selects. And I wish the interns would have pulled the trigger, but that is the tragic story of the Cookies interns.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly how it was edited or whatever, but like if you go to our website, it says the home of ethical basketball, which is from when we created that web store, or when the interns, as you said, created that web store, which is years and years and years and years ago. It was never updated to my knowledge. That's what it was from the jump. Anyway, look, when people take credit for stuff, it sounds like they're like,
big time.
Oh man, I wish I got credit for that, back in the, but these things they stole from us. Like, no. We're just talking about this on the 500th episode that we're happy to contribute.
It's a celebration.
The dialogue in the modern NBA. I wish those t-shirts existed just because that would have been funny, but it is whatever. What it is. If you know,
I don't want to big time ourselves.
But also, some people's job is latching onto the ideas that other people come up with. And other people's job is having the most influential basketball podcast. So get in where you fit in, my friend.
That's right. But, there was that clip circulating of SGA, I believe, against Asar Thompson. And it seems at first that SGA grabs his arm, flails, Asar Thompson gets kicked. He gets 2 free throws. There's a hubbub afterwards about what happens. People get ejected. And it is an example of the unethical modern NBA. But upon further review, there's another angle where Asar Thompson reaches in. And I'm like, hey, if you have a problem with SGA selling Asar Thompson's reaching foul, then I assume you're not a Michael Jordan fan, because Michael Jordan kind of invented all of this, right? Selling calls, not for the moment, but maybe down the line in the game, in a week, in the playoffs. SGA wants to be like, hey, he reached in. I want you to note that. And if I don't grab him, you're not going to stop the play. So I want you to know that players are reaching in on me, because he's a crafty ball handler like your god, Michael Jordan.
Yeah, I don't know who started foul grifting. It's been around forever. I mean, going back to guys like Barkley, Malone, David Robinson, they had free throw rates that wildly exceed, the current group of people. And part of that was grifting. Part of that was the way that defenses behaved and players were in the post more often. And I think one of the things that stands out now is that, like, Giannis doesn't get called a foul grifter because he's not a good foul shooter. Right. And he doesn't really want to go to the line. People are intentionally fouling him to stop him. And I would say, though, that although Embiid, SGA, those two guys in particular, Jimmy Butler deserves a shout out here for sure. They are trying to draw contact. They are trying to get to the line. James Harden, ethical basketball originalist. They are definitely trying to draw fouls and draw contact.
Brunson.
A lot of the time they're getting fouled is because people just can't guard them either.
It is a skill, right? Like, I think Thinking Basketball went through a deep dive of all of SGA's fouls. And they were like, we expected a lot of missed calls, but there were not many. Most of them were fouls, because what makes him valuable is not only is he an amazing shooter, a passer, but he's an amazing ball handler. And if you don't recognize that, then you're just not a fan of his skill set, right? And I don't know. I shouldn't take the bait of people who are kind of profiteering content wise on grievance like this, but like the delicious part of it is like this is Michael Jordan Kobe stuff. This is what they were so good at. And I guess we're just kicking the can, or this might be your Overton window kind of thing, or we can't really criticize the things that we establish as canon, but the things that aren't canon yet because he doesn't have a championship, we can file our complaints against.
If you go back and you watch Dwayne Wade, Paul Pierce, Sam Cassell, guys who were really well known for drawing fouls.
I like that.
You know, Cassell, he was fantastic.
I love Sam Cassell.
He'd drive into the lane, give you a little
balls.
bump. He'd up fake. You'd go for it. He'd lean into you, flail. Oh, Sam Cassell. Every now and then he'd get an and one, but most of the time he was just trying to draw contact and go to the line.
And juggle.
Wade was fantastic at that. Paul Pierce, again, a lot of guys can do this. It's interesting that those guys weren't really vilified for doing that. It wasn't that they were cheating. It was that they were crafty. They're cagey veterans. Like, they're so crafty, man. He's so crafty. I think a bigger difference now is just that offenses now run so much through individual scorers, and these superstars in particular. There's so many more possessions a game. There's so much more scoring. And I saw people complaining about SGA the other night. It was against the Pistons. And he was 10 of 10 from the line. You're like, okay, that's quite a few foul shots. It's not insane. He took 26 attempts. Yeah. Like, that's not crazy. Shooter.
Yeah.
But he basically got fouled, excluding and ones or threes, just we could say. He got fouled 5 times on shots out of his 26. That's
math.
Not a high free throw rate at all. That's under 25%. That's not a lot of free throws. So even in that case, people are griping and bitching about it. I'm like, no, he took 26 attempts. He scored like 50 some points. The offense was all going through him. Of course he went to the free throw line a few times. What would have been the right amount? 26 field goal attempts, 2 free throws. Like what version of basketball are you even talking about?
Yeah, and you're doing some basic math here, but like Nikola Jokić was roasted for giving up a bunch of points to the KBB's number 1 player, Alex Sarr. And Sarr had a big game against the Nuggets. The hopeless Wizards, right? And everyone's like, this is your MVP? The guy who gives up, like, I believe 35 points to a rookie who scored his career high on the Wizards? And then people were like, listen, he shot 5 threes that Jokić wasn't guarding him during. Like, and I'm like, yeah, switching is the story of the NBA. And Jokić isn't glued to him throughout the whole game, right? And Jokić, I enjoy Jokić being the subject of maybe the fallibility of some statistics. That's great. Make them better. It should be adjusted. It should be alive. Equations should be living organisms, right? We should change them as soon as they're broken. But he is not less of an MVP candidate than he was previously because he has a worse team around him. Like, these are all conversations, and I'm like, am I digging through the wrong crates? Are people just buying the Jay-Z albums on the wall and not looking for Artifacts 12s? Because don't you guys get bored of just buying what's on the wall? Don't you want to like be your own DJ Shadow?
Are they on the wrong side of the tracks, in fact? Well, I would say that